They were missing what the prophecy had given them in the fact there was judgment to come and what to expect. They were missing it. And many of us are doing the same thing, if you want to apply it in the spiritual realm. We miss it because we have our own set of agendas, and we keep thinking, manana, we can wait. There's going to be plenty of time, but there isn't. You know, you read books like Storm Warnings. You read Billy Graham's maybe book on Revelation about the interpretation of the last days. And there are all kinds of books and series of books on this. And we have the knowledge. We just don't act on it so very often to prepare and be ready. Why then can we not see what needs to be done in the changing times? One of my best friends was a man my age. He's dead now. I mean, he and I were close. He was on the pastor search committee that called me First Baptist Biloxi. When we first started talking about moving the church from downtown out to the interstate, well, we didn't even know where it was going to be. But just to move it from downtown. He didn't like the idea. Now, he supported it, but he didn't like it. And the reason was, he felt like he wanted to wait for those who were coming after us to make a decision and go. There was a comfort zone. And he and I talked about it. There was a comfort zone. He wanted to keep things just like they had always been, because he knew he didn't have a whole lot longer to live. A lot of folks that way. Don't rock my boat. Don't take my fuzzy, warm teddy bear away. I like it just like it's always been. I do too. I want to confess to you. I do too. That's okay. I can get rid of the teddy bear and the warm blanket, whatever you want to call it, if I think people are loving Jesus. You know, I pick on my son-in-law all the time, but he's an A and I'm a Z. You know, we're total opposites. But next Sunday they're baptizing 24 people at one time. 24 at one time. Folks, I can't argue that. I can't argue with that. You know. How many we baptized in the last 12 months? When you start doing the soul searching. We need to analyze the present time. People need Jesus. Amen. Years ago, I don't know how long, several years ago, I think I could probably look back here and tell you, let's see, 1995, I probably bought this book around 2000, something like this. I lost it in Katrina. One of my favorite books, and a couple of Biloxi knew I lost when I lost my library. They bought me another copy and gave it to me. It's called Sacred Cows Make Homemade Burgers by Bill Easton. I love titles like that, catchy title. You know, I like to take this and work a sermon series about making homemade burgers or something like that. That'll get your attention, you know. But in this book, Bill Easton tells about a church that was over 100 years old. Over 100 years old. That's important. Nail that down. For the last 30 years, they had been in decline, going down. But they still were averaging 400 people. And in Mississippi life, that's a pretty good sized church. You know, averaging 400 people. The neighborhood was being revitalized with young couples coming back in, moving back in. You know, redoing the old buildings and new apartments and so forth. And some young couples had joined this church. And when young couples join churches, that means they are babies and they are small children. But this church didn't have a nursery. They used to have a nursery. But 30 years ago, they had moved the nursery to the basement. And then in the last 10 years, they just shut it down totally because they didn't need a nursery. They didn't think. And so these couples who had small children went to the pastor and they asked him, could we start a nursery? Could we have a nursery? And we'd like to have a paid worker if we could. And so the pastor said, this, the finance committee would have to be consulted because they make all financial decisions. The trustees of the church would have to make a decision about the use of facilities because they take care of the property. Now, we may have a different title. We may call it building grounds, or we may call it the board, or we may call it the deacons, or we may call it the property committee, something like that. But you get my point. You hang in here with me. So, the young couples went to the trustees and they asked, could they have a nursery? And they were, the basement is where the nursery had been when they shut it down. But the trustee said the basement now is used for storage. Well, could we maybe go back where it used to be, so we were told, across from the auditorium, because that'd be real close by? Well, no, because you see, the ladies spent a lot of money on the church parlor. We don't use it anymore, but they spent a lot of money. It looks good, so you can't use the parlor. They went to the finance committee about a paid worker, and the finance committee said, no, you don't need a paid worker because when we grew up, we didn't have a paid worker. We took care of our own. So they were kind of at a stalemate. Finally, they went back and they asked, would you let us use the basement? And we'll try to remodel it, we'll fix it up. And the trustee said, well, we've got to have part of it for storage. The carpet was dingy and smelly and it needed to be painted. And they even offered to pay for the paint when we carpet down and to pay for the worker. And the finance committee said no, because that would encourage designated giving. So, 2 years after that encounter, according to Bill Houston, 2 years and several thousand more young couple families had moved into the area. The church was still going down, for those couples had moved to a more friendly environment. The pastor said, we still think we made the right decision. For if those young couples had been committed, they would not have moved their church membership. Bill Easton says, holy cow. Holy cow, it's time to make gourmet burgers.